I am 70 years old, a grandmother of 4, and a woman who wears the title of respected like a second skin. At family gatherings, I am the steady one, the moral compass, the one my children call when they need advice. My neighbors see me as the kind of woman who has lived properly, gracefully, without scandal. But tonight, as I sit in the quiet of my living room with the clock ticking louder than ever, I feel the urge to tell a story I have carried like a secret flame in my chest. A story of sin, passion, guilt, and yes, happiness. It was not the story of my marriage, though my husband has been a good man, loyal in his own way. It was not the story of raising my children, though they remain the pride of my life. No, this story belongs to a time when I was suffocating under the weight of perfection, buried alive beneath the expectations of family, career, and reputation. I was a lawyer then, known in the city for my sharp mind and relentless work ethic. Clients came to me with their darkest troubles, and I had the skill to bring them light, or at least a way out. But for all my victories in the courtroom, I was quietly losing myself in the confines of a marriage that had been more convenient than romantic. And then came the case. A case that would open a door I didn't even know was waiting for me. My client was a convicted man, young, defiant, magnetic. A man society had caged but whose spirit seemed untamed. I never imagined that stepping into that prison to represent him would awaken something long asleep inside me. This is not a confession of regret. It is a confession of a woman who, for the first time in her life, allowed herself to burn. The first time I walked through those iron gates, I felt the weight of every eye on me. The guards gave me curt nods, accustomed to lawyers in pressed suits, but I could sense their curiosity. I was 48 at the time, polished, composed, my hair pinned neatly, my heels clicking with authority on the concrete floor. But beneath that armor, I was already fraying at the seams. He was waiting in the visitor's room, shackled, his hands resting casually on the table as though he owned the space. His eyes lifted when I entered, and for a moment, the air shifted. I had spent years facing down powerful men in courtrooms, but something about his gaze unsettled me. It was not the stare of a criminal. It was the stare of someone who had nothing left to lose, and that made him dangerous. Our first conversation was purely professional. I explained his options, the appeal process, the risks. He listened, but I could tell his attention lingered not on my words, but on me. When he smiled, half amusement, half challenge, it was as though he had already stripped me of every layer of pretense I carried. I left the prison that day with my briefcase full of documents, but my heart strangely lighter, my pulse quicker. Driving home, I caught myself in the rearview mirror. My cheeks were flushed, my eyes brighter than they had been in years. My husband greeted me that evening with his usual distracted warmth, and my children chattered about their own busy lives. No one noticed the spark that had quietly been reignited in me. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. The memory of his gaze returned again and again, and for the first time in decades, I felt alive. Weeks turned into months as I worked on his case. Every visit to the prison became more than a duty. It became an escape. I would prepare meticulously, telling myself it was for the sake of my client. But in truth, I longed for those hours across the table from him. He had a way of making me laugh, of drawing out confessions I didn't know I wanted to make. He would ask about my family, my children, even my marriage. And though I answered carefully, I knew he could hear the emptiness between my words. The attraction grew in silence, in stolen glances, in the brush of his hand when he leaned forward. Once, while passing him a pen, his fingers grazed mine, and a current shot through me so strong that I had to steady my breathing. I told myself it was nothing, just a fleeting moment, but deep down, I knew I was already crossing a line. One afternoon, after a particularly intense meeting, He leaned closer and whispered, "You're not like the others. You don't belong in their world. You're alive in here, with me." His words clung to me long after I left. Alive. Was that what this was? Not just temptation, but resurrection? At home, the suffocation became unbearable. My husband, comfortable in routine, never noticed the distance between us. My children, absorbed in their adult lives, rarely asked how I truly felt. And so, in the shadows of duty and expectation, I found myself yearning for the one place where I felt seen, inside those prison walls. I knew I was walking on dangerous ground, but the danger thrilled me. For the first time in my life, I was no longer just a lawyer, a wife, a mother. I was a woman, and I was awakening. It happened on a rainy afternoon, the kind of day when the prison felt more suffocating than usual. I had been reviewing documents with him, going over details that could make or break his appeal. His attention, though, was not on the papers. His eyes never left me. There was a moment, just a flicker, when our hands brushed again, and this time, neither of us pulled away. The room was quiet, save for the hum of the fluorescent lights. His fingers lingered, bold and steady, while mine trembled. I should have withdrawn, reminded him and myself of the boundaries between us. But instead, I allowed it. I felt the warmth of his skin seep into mine, a reminder that I was still flesh and blood, not just a polished figure in a tailored suit. When I finally looked up, his expression was calm, as if he had expected this moment all along. "You feel it too," he said, his voice low. My lips parted, but no words came. He leaned back, not pushing further, but the damage was done. The seal had been broken. That night, I couldn't erase the memory of his touch. I lay awake beside my husband, who snored gently, oblivious. I thought of the prisoner's hands, strong, scarred, yet tender. For the first time in years, my body ached not from exhaustion, but from desire. I told myself it was only physical, only curiosity. But deep down, I knew it was far more dangerous than that. Our encounters began to change after that day. Conversations that once revolved around legal strategies now drifted into forbidden territory. He asked about my dreams, my disappointments, the hollow spaces in my marriage. I found myself confiding in him, revealing pieces of myself I had hidden even from friends. Each confession drew us closer, each shared smile another step into the abyss. The first true crossing of the line came in a quiet room away from the main hall. The guards, used to my visits, had grown careless, giving us moments of privacy I knew we should not abuse. But we did. He leaned across the table and pressed his lips against mine, hungry, desperate, and yet impossibly gentle. I should have pushed him away, reported the breach, reminded myself of the consequences. Instead, I kissed him back with a fervor that startled me. It was as though all the years of silence, of dutiful smiles and restrained desires erupted in that single stolen moment. My heart pounded so fiercely, I thought it might give me away. From then on, each visit carried an unspoken promise. Sometimes it was only a touch, a whisper, a look that lingered too long. Other times, in rare pockets of stolen privacy, it became more. My body, starved for affection, awakened under his. I had never known such intensity, not even in the early days of my marriage. And yet, after each encounter, guilt clawed at me. I would drive home in silence, rehearsing normalcy, forcing smiles at dinner. My family never suspected, but inside I was torn apart. Lawyer, wife, mother by day, reckless lover by stolen hours. The duality of my life began to consume me. By day, I argued cases, attended charity galas, and smiled for photographs that painted me as the very picture of integrity. By night, I replayed the memory of his touch, the sound of his laughter, the way he made me feel alive. Sometimes I hated myself for it. I would stand in front of the mirror, staring at the woman I had become, a hypocrite, a liar, a woman betraying not only her husband, but her children, her profession, her very values. I promised myself each time that it would be the last, that I would end the visits, that I would draw the line once and for all. But then I would see him again, and the moment his eyes met mine, every vow I made crumbled. He had a hold on me I could not escape. He made me believe that I was more than my titles, more than my duties. With him, I was not invisible. With him, I was desired. One night, after returning from the prison, I sat on the porch while my husband read the newspaper inside. I stared at the stars, tears streaming silently down my face. I loved my family. I loved the life I had built. But I loved, too, the reckless freedom he gave me, even if it was only behind bars. I realized then that happiness and guilt could live side by side, that love could both heal and destroy. And I wondered how long I could live divided, balancing on the knife's edge of passion and ruin. I do not know if it was fate, or if the universe simply grew tired of watching me play with fire. His appeal failed. The day I stood in the courtroom and heard the decision, I knew our time together had reached its natural end. He would remain behind bars for years to come, and I could no longer justify my visits, not to my conscience, not to the law, not to my family. Our last meeting was quiet. There were no kisses, no stolen touches, only the unbearable heaviness of silence. He looked at me with the same piercing gaze that had first unraveled me, but this time it carried resignation. "You gave me something no one else ever did," he said softly. "You saw me." I wanted to tell him he had done the same for me, that he had awakened me, reminded me that I was more than a role, more than a mask. But the words lodged in my throat. Instead, I pressed his hand one final time, memorizing the feel of his skin. When the guards came, I rose, adjusted my suit jacket, and walked away with measured steps. Outside the prison gates, I stood in the rain, trembling. It felt as though a part of me had been left behind those walls. But I also knew that what we had lived was ours alone, unrepeatable, unforgettable. It was a chapter sealed, a fire that had burned bright and fierce before extinguishing. Driving home that day, I promised myself I would carry the memory not as a burden, but as a secret source of strength, a reminder that, once in my life, I had dared to feel alive. Now, at 70, I look back on that forbidden chapter not with shame, but with a strange, quiet gratitude. My husband and I grew closer in the years that followed, in ways I never expected. Retirement softened him. Grandchildren brought joy into our home, and in the comfort of routine, I found peace again. But the woman who had once been suffocated was gone forever. When I sit with my grandchildren and watch them play, I think of the woman I used to be, dutiful, restrained, invisible. And I smile because I know I am not that woman anymore. I am whole, I am complicated, I am human. The affair did not destroy me. It freed me. It gave me the courage to face the rest of my life without regret. Do I condone what I did? No. I know it was reckless, dangerous, even cruel in some ways. But I cannot deny that it was also beautiful. It was passion in its rawest form, joy in its purest expression. And though society would call it wrong, to me, it was simply life. I am a grandmother now, a respected woman in my community. I love my husband, my children, and the quiet rhythm of my days. Yet in the hidden chambers of my heart, I keep that secret flame alive, not because I yearn to repeat it, but because it reminds me of who I truly am. And so I confess to you, whoever you are listening, I have no regrets. I lived, I loved, I burned, and I would not trade that fire for anything. If this story moved you, if it stirred something inside, whether curiosity, reflection, or even disagreement, I invite you to share your thoughts. Leave a comment below. I want to hear your voice, your perspective. And if you want more, stories like this, stories of passion, secrets, and the hidden lives we rarely speak of, then don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next tale. Because sometimes the stories we hide are the ones that make us most alive.